Welcome to the readings again from the Chronicles of Kera, book number 1, Kera, King and Queen by Om Prakash Gilmore. We hope you are enjoying these readings. Please follow us on Facebook or wherever you get this reading from so that we can perhaps monetize and create better things for you. And so we pick up where we left off on chapter 27. The title of this one is John Thought They Were Savage and Barbarian. These are the thoughts from John. The big red-headed woman had me separated from Casey and the other women from the gray area. I had heard about the brothels, the slavery, the rapes, but how could someone possibly rape a man? How could they possibly rape John? I had been raised in North Philadelphia and I had fought most of my life. I had studied Aikido before anyone knew what it was. I had studied boxing and Tai Chi sword. I was in great shape, but I couldn't fight a whole planet. This was not Earth. I was in a place where the women were bigger, stronger, faster, and more angry than any men I had ever seen. There was no punishment for raping and burning. They were savage and barbarian. I still was going to kick their asses, though. While I was on Earth, I thought that our world was bad. I hated capitalism and our whole hierarchical system. Now seeing what it had probably replaced by, I began to understand why so many conservatives fought to keep it. Was this what we would revert back to if we loosened the reins of our bought and paid for leaders? I wondered. I looked at a mirror. I was tall, muscular, and strong and wiry, definitely dangerous for a man on this planet. I was all alone in a round tent. Several drapes and veils hung from the walls and ceiling. A large red velvet circular bed sit in the middle with pink see-through curtains around it. The big redhead stepped into the opening. I could see her standing there right behind me in the mirror undressing. I guess she was the first today. I was in a brothel. Me, a sex slave. I didn't know how much time had passed. Lack of food. The beatings, people forcing themselves on me had broken my spirits. At first I fought. I had broken arms, probably even snapped a few necks, but these people had only seen it as a challenge. They started sending in captives to challenge me. After not having food for so long, I became weak. I lost the battle to 3 or 4 of them at once. They pushed some type of pressure point near the base of my spine that gave me excruciating pain, but readied me for their acts of aggression. Then they did it, all of them. It was either starve and be abused, or eat well and give in. Sell myself for food. The redhead cleared her throat. Lucille, do you remember? I looked over my shoulder and saw her standing there, naked in the mirror, looking somewhat uneasy. There she stood, the one who had destroyed my life and introduced me to this world of pain and anger. I turned to her and pursed my lips. You can't still be angry, she said, a look of exasperation. We treated you well. She walked out of the drapes, walked across the room, and picked up a flimsy red negligee. She draped it over her shoulders. We give you food. We give you a comfortable place. No one hurts you, do they? I was silent. She took a few steps forward. Do they? Clenched fist. I'll kill them if I find out. Afraid they'll harm your property? I asked angrily. She put her arms on her hips and sighed audibly. Sorry to disturb you, I said. Sorry to make you think that what you have been doing might be wrong. You and your ancestors have been doing this for a long time, after all. I walked over and stood in front of her. I crossed my arms. I thought about ridiculous in the skippy costume they'd given me, but that didn't stop me. You think that you can do anything just because you're able to, is that right? Well, it's not right. You're going to pay for it. She took a step back. She probably remembered what I had done earlier. Here she was, in here with me all alone. I could kill her. Thought ran through my mind. For the first time, I smiled. She took a step back. Don't worry. You're not going to get yours yet. I know that all you need to do is scream or something so you can be saved by all of your coward friends. But it's coming. Just like the rain on Aqua, your fall is coming. She squared her hips and planted her feet, shoulders width apart, and then jutted her chin out defiantly. Her eyes narrowed. Service me. I will, I said, brushing the side of her face seductively. I will definitely service you and some of your friends. Maybe one of them will be so moved by me that they'll want to take me away from you. Her shoulders slumped. Oops, I'm not supposed to think that way, am I? You'll be in the blue area then. You're way too dangerous for us. She turned briskly and headed to the bed to retrieve her clothing. Services would not be required today. I didn't know if I had helped myself or had run into even more harm. At that time, I really didn't care. Someone was going to pay dearly for this abuse. Chapter 28. Rob wondered, what about Kara? I felt like a coward sleeping with the enemy, and she hadn't even needed to force me. I wondered what was wrong with me and how long it had been. 1 or 2 months. I hadn't seen a calendar for a long time. Everyone had congratulated her for taming this outlander, bringing him under submission. That she had done. How could I care one bit for such an angry, wild creature? She was a rapist and a murderer like so many before her, but I really cared for her. I loved her, sort of. But what about Kara? I would look down at the 3 dull red stones every so often while taking a bath or shower and wonder how she was doing. Kara was a world away. For those brief instances on that planetoid I had known paradise. I thought about it often and accepted the fact that it was now over. I sat on the edge of the bed in the princess's chamber and fondled the jewels. I could see Icor's face in the mirror. She was putting on very light touches of makeup here and there. She looked in the mirror and saw me and then looked away. Do you like it here? She asked. I didn't say anything. I wondered where that question had come from. She continued. I treat you well, don't I? Well enough. But are you going to take those jewels off? They are the royal engagement ring for the house of Kera. I lifted my brows. I thought you said you were from another solar system or something, not Kera. I am. I met Kara on a planetoid. She looked over her shoulder and smiled, and then slowly turned to face me. You met Kara herself, eh? She asked, almost laughingly. The big queen herself. She's been missing for years, so that's where she was. She looked at me hard. Then you met the real queen. The real queen? Oh, yes. Kara really goes through some changes while she's on that planet of hers. She's the only one I ever feared. What kind of changes? She paused for a moment and looked away. Well, she turned back. I'm trying to put it the best way I can. She's a monster, she shrugged. What do you mean, a monster? She's the most quiet and gentle woman I ever met. When she's not on that planet. I liked Kara. I was raised with her, you know. All of the royal families were raised together. She was nice then. Anyway, you're mine now, aren't you? I fell back on the bed and looked up at the ceiling. Here I was sleeping with her without being forced. Physically forced to, anyway. I guess I am, I said. But you feel coerced. That's because you have been coerced. But you'll come around. That's the way marriage is on my planet. I'm not being mean or nasty to you for any personal reason. That's the way we do it. We see a man with the right qualities, especially to rule a nation, and then we take him. I love you, so I took you. I shook my head and looked away. It might sound crazy to you, but that's been our way for centuries. Now you and I are married until death do us part. She smiled brightly. I will care for you, protect you, and never hurt you, unless you try to escape. Her face became a mask of anger. If that ever happens, you'll wish that you were dead, or that I was. I'm already beginning to wish that, I said angrily. I had stopped trying to hide anything that I was thinking long ago. I guess we were married because she just rolled her eyes and turned back toward the mirror. I knew she couldn't wait to get out of there. Maybe the brothel suits you better, she said angrily. That's where men like you usually end up. That's our way, and we have the right to do it. What gives you the right? I fired back. Because we can. She stood and wheeled towards me, slamming the chair to the floor. She breathed heavily, fists clenched. She looked like she was about to do some bodily harm. I was a bit afraid, but my mouth kept going. Why not add spouse abuse to the long list of your wrongdoing? I asked. She stepped back as if she had been slapped with a wet sponge. I'm not an abuser. This is just the way things are. We have a hierarchy on this planet. The strong are the ones at the top. The strong are the ones that make the rules. The strong are the ones who get what they deserve. That's the way of nature. I don't believe that, I said. She pursed her lips and shook her head. Do you think you'd be here right now if you hadn't proven that you were strong? She spread her hands. Look around you. You're a prince. You can have just about everything you want. You could be pimped out. You could be in a pleasure palace or forced to fight for your supper. Is this so bad? She bent over to pick up the chair. She straddled the chair and leaned on the back, looking at me. I can send you there, you know. Thousands of emotions welled up in me. I don't believe you would say that. That's totally unfair. You say you're going to throw me out if I don't agree with you? She was speechless. Do you want me to bow and worship you like these other people do too? Because you're the high princess? Is that what I need to do or get thrown into some whorehouse? She held her hands up in front of her. Okay. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Okay. I went a little too far. I guess she could see that I was still angry. She approached slowly. I could see her face soften, her body language change. I'm really sorry. She sat on the bed beside me and took my hand. I thought to snatch it away, but to my surprise, I squeezed her hand tightly. She leaned over and kissed me. I loved her. I was surprised to find out that I actually loved this woman. What was going to become of me? How could I escape from someone that I loved? Chapter 29. John wondered how he could kill her. John's thoughts. So this was Blue Area. I looked around. I could probably escape, and I needed to remember how to. Blue Area was nothing but a deep slit in the forest. As I entered, I could see that it was a hallway. It widened as it went deeper. Sentries stood there at the final opening, a large hallway with no real door. They gave Lucille and her red area emissaries a nod. One of the emissaries looked me over. I was starting to get used to being considered a beauty. I felt a bit embarrassed, wondering if they knew that I had been sexually abused. I was a sex slave. I had given in to them. I couldn't have been more embarrassed. Let's move. Lucille jammed my shoulder hard. Florence laughed a bit. Florence was her flunky, a somewhat ugly woman, thick around the middle, with hair that looked like it had been greased with motor oil. The only way she could get a man was to rape him. I looked at her and despised her. I wondered how I could kill her. More importantly, when. I would use my body all right when I got to the right person, a woman high enough on the food chain, I would get my revenge. I thought of how angry and ridiculous that sounded. It seemed that the thought of revenge was all that was keeping me alive. So I would hold on to my anger. Quit shoving, ugly, I snapped. I walked through, quickly right past the sentries, knowing that I would get away with it because of my good looks. I was going to use these good looks to get them all into a lot of trouble. The sentry shook her head and clucked her tongue. Casey and the two other prisoners of Gray Area followed me. There were also several men from all over the planet. I didn't know any of them. We had been kept separate on purpose. None of them were as exotic as me, even though I was just average on Earth. Here I was a tall model. Slow up, Florence shouted. I ignored her and continued to walk. She began to rush towards me, but Lucille put a restraining grip on her forearm. I heard her whisper something, and Florence dropped back. I heard Lucille speak in a softer tone. John, you know better. You don't know where you're going. Isn't that the story of my life? Come on, John. You know what's going to happen, don't you? You'll need to be punished. I bet a lot of women in this place, in this nice area, would like to be the first one to have you. I stopped cold. She came alongside me. Thought you might think it through. I did care about you, but I won't be threatened. I would have kept you. We would have had fun. You would have had fun, I shot back. I'd rather sleep with a rat than you. You might have that chance, or I might kill you if you keep embarrassing me. What? You can't conquer? You kill? She laughed and shook her head. You've been conquered for months. You just got broken in. Now I'm going to trade you off. I slammed my fist into her teeth and gave her a straight kick in the solar plexus. She was down and out. Florence and some of the other women surrounded me, swords drawn. I held my hands up and locked my fingers behind my neck. Florence tied my wrists together with a plastic strap as others struggled to awaken their boss. I smiled. I knew I was going to get it, but it was really worth it this time. Lucille sat up and wiped the blood from her mouth. Some of her teeth were bleeding. With help, she stood. I could see a pained expression on her face as she hunched towards the solar plexus. She flagged off all help and put up her hand. There. Just move on. She walked up and grabbed me behind the neck, pinching my nerves. My shoulders rose like a child's. She was really strong. I grimaced. Thought I would pass out. She leaned close and whispered, the only reason I don't castrate you is because these people don't want damaged goods. She shoved me. Move on now before I count you as a loss. I smiled to myself and headed into Blue Area. We're going to meet the king and queen again, Florence said. Means a lot more money. She handed Lucille a handkerchief. Lucille began to wipe her mouth. She looked down at the handkerchief and saw her own blood. We walked into the door, into the main gathering space of Blue Area. Things were going on there. There were musicians, cafes, clubs. People were walking about and living what seemed joyful lives. There was nothing like what was happening out there in the forest. I was disappointed. I would have liked to learn more about their culture, but the beginning contact had turned me against all of them. I couldn't put my anger aside. There were several more guards and police standing everywhere. We continued into what seemed to be the residential areas. Even more guards and police stood by various dwelling places. They all looked similar, but some of the doors were wider apart than others. We came to a small dead end. The head security woman stepped forward and pushed several buttons on a keypad next to the doorknob. The door swung easily on its hinges. We were led into a very large apartment room with several baths and bathrooms. Lucille escorted me to the rear bed and bathroom. We better clean up if we're going to meet the royal family. She turned to the guards. I'll be glad to get rid of this loose one. Florence smiled. So did a few sentries. This one is a psycho. She pointed into the room. Go ahead. You better make yourself nice and clean, too. I'll be glad to be done with you. My eyes narrowed and I looked at her. She took a step back. I walked into the bedroom and began to bathe and prepare myself. New clothing was laid out across the bed. These savages would spare no price to wrap me up and make me look nice and pretty. I would be auctioned off at the dinner at the palace like my ancestors long ago. But I wasn't one of them. I removed my clothes slowly, knowing that this would be the last day of my life. I was going to kill a lot of people tonight and probably get killed myself in the process. I didn't care anymore. Better to die free than to live in chains. I began to remove the necklace with the shield power cell in it. I looked down and noticed something. It was fully charged. There we are, folks. Hang on in to hear another reading. Sometimes next week. We hope that you are enjoying these readings, finding them helpful. We hope you'll visit our website at nextstepcoaching.mysite.com and on our YouTube channel, or hit the like button, hit the bell, so you can receive more of these readings and other teachings on life, work, and spirituality. It's always good to be with you. Namaste.